I create communications that confront the many fault lines that separate human beings, religions and cultures and stereotypes and prejudices and hatreds and fears. I deal with issues like torture, rape, sexual abuse, preventable diseases. What motivates me to deal with these kinds of issues on a global basis? That's what I want to talk to you about. Find your own inspiration. I'm going to tell you what inspires me. More than anything, children inspire me to do my work. And I'm going to give you two examples very briefly of children that have inspired me. I have met many famous people and been influenced by people like Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I have met people who work on the front lines, who labor under very difficult conditions with no recognition at all. But who really inspires me are two children, one African and one Asian. One I met several years ago, and one I met just a few months ago. So as was mentioned, one of my works that's best known is called The Three Amigos. It's three funny animated condoms that have been around the world. We've now created them in 45 languages, and to the best of my knowledge, over 1 billion people have seen them in over 100 countries. Three funny animated condoms that are trying to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS. So in one of my visits to Africa to distribute this series, I went to a small rural community in South Africa. And there in the community health clinic, I gathered together all the doctors and nurses that deal with HIV/AIDS. And I noticed in the corner of this room there was a young boy. His name was Victor. He looked about 6 or 7 to me, but I later learned he was 11 years old. And Victor was in some distress. He was obviously very, very sick. The nurses and doctors played with him during my presentation, and then afterwards they came outside, he came out with them, and he sat through the playing of the Three Amigos in the waiting room of this community health clinic. At the end of the playing, he wanted a picture with me. So he came, he grabbed the DVD from the doctor that I had given it to, he sat down, and he said, "Now take the picture." And that picture is above my desk, and that picture inspires me. Victor got HIV/AIDS from mother to child transmission, which is easily preventable. He got AIDS simply by being born. Nothing else, just by being born. When the nurses came with me on the way back into town, I said to them, well, this is great. At least he's in the community health clinic and he gets the life-saving antiretroviral drugs that keep people alive. And they said to me, to my horror, he doesn't get them because he's a child. They don't give out the life-saving ARV drugs to children, so he watches every day adults getting drugs that will save their lives, but he is given nothing more than aspirin. Victor was written off from birth. The second child that I want to tell you about is called Durjoy, and I met him just a few months ago in Bangladesh. One of the vilest forms of human depravity that I've ever heard of is the throwing of acid onto a person. Acid burns and disfigures a person. In Bangladesh, a few months ago, I met a young boy who is now 5 years old. When he was 1 month old, acid was poured down his throat. Today, his tongue is fused to his mouth. He has to be fed through a tube. He cannot leave the hospital for fear of infection. Durjoy's life was shattered by his aunt because of a land dispute with his family. Now, why do I tell you these stories? Why do I tell you that we should care about Victor and we should care about Durjoy? Why do I tell you that they are my children and they are your children? Not because I want to depress you, but because I want to tell you that these kinds of stories should challenge you, should get you to rise up to the problems that are facing the world, to get you to motivate them. That's what motivates me. That's what motivates me to deal with these kinds of issues on a global basis, because I know Durjoy, and I know Victor, and I know people who have been tortured, and I know people who are raped, and I know people who are sexually abused, and that is the kind of work that I'm trying to do in creating global communications. It is extremely difficult work to do. Obviously, what Canadians find funny is not what South Africans find funny, it's not what Japanese finds funny, and yet we use humor to bring the audience to a serious point. My next program, which we're creating here in Ottawa and in Switzerland and in Holland and in South Africa, is to deal with trying to prevent domestic violence. So it deals with a lot of subjects that you'll be interested in, because we're trying to stop abuse against children. We're saying to parents, don't abuse your children. Don't have violence against your children. Mothers, don't hit your children. Fathers, don't hit your children. Parents, don't allow your frustration to escalate into abuse. And I'm going to end by showing you one of these spots. It's a work in progress, so there's no music yet, there's no sound effect yet, but you're going to see it. It's on sexual abuse between a man and woman. And basically, we're trying to create them in 73 languages. If we do it in 73 languages, we can reach about 80% of the world's population, or over 6 billion people, in their own language. And we're going to launch this later on this month, and it's handed out free of charge to anybody. All my work is handed out free of charge around the world to anybody who writes in. We don't charge for anything. We say, here it is, get it out, play it, do whatever you want with it. Let's get the message out, and let's try and stop these issues, these problems. These are challenges that you should rise up to. This is your time. This is your moment. I know it's in your intuition. I know that that's the person that you want to be as well. Well, let this moment be the time you get to decide your destiny. So here's one of my spots.
Do you promise to beat your wife and abuse her in sickness and in health?
I do.
Excuse me?
And do you promise to love and cherish your husband whenever he abuses you?
She agrees.
You may beat the bride.
Enjoy your honeymoon.
Marriage or partnership does not give you a license to abuse.
That's it.